to Ink and Imagination, a new part of my writing journey. I'm Craig Cruz, author and poet. Today we're going to start reading MUSSOPO and His Great Adventure, chapter by chapter. I love that I get to share this story with you. If you take anything from the story, I hope that you remember that anyone can write with a little imagination. So let's get started. MUSSOPO and His Great Adventure, chapter 1. Zis dis pit chelup maxifum up Eldenaxalup, e pessum, eka ex up. Wait a minute. Something's wrong here. Oh, author's note. Oops. I'm very sorry to have started telling the story in the native tongue of opossum, for although our main character understands other languages, in the animal world and even the human language, I forgot that it is not common for humans to understand the language of the opossum. So let us start again. This is a story about an ordinary opossum. Ordinary may not be the best description, as you will soon see. This opossum situation has caused some extraordinary circumstances. Circumstances that you as a reader may not realize happen in the animal world. This tells an adventure through dangerous places such as snow-covered mountains and flooded streams, not to mention the evil of others that are out for his demise. One time, the escape was so narrow that I didn't think that, wait, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning. That is always a great place to start. This particular opossum's name is MUSSOPO. You will see how he got his name very soon. He remembers being a young Joey in his mother's pouch with his brothers and sisters. Opossums are marsupials and carry their young in their pouch. MUSSOPO truly loved his family. He recalled certain things such as the smell and the sound of the forest. Pine trees were his favorite smell. He remembered climbing out of his mother's pouch and walking along the sticky branch of a pine tree as the golden sap stuck to his feet, and then to his mother's fur as he made his way back to her, and climbed upon her back before returning to the safe, dark pouch. The feeling of comfort from the warmth of his mother's pouch and the closeness that came while nursing with his siblings while they nestled side by side within the pouch was a feeling that still brings him great joy. He remembers the sound of rushing water that was so loud near the waterfall that he could not hear his mother as she spoke, and then that same sound only muffled as he fell asleep in his mother's pouch along with his 9 brothers and sisters. MUSSOPO now lives in a small petting zoo with a lot of other animals. He remembers the day that he was brought to the zoo. It was scary for him, but not as scary as the events that separated him from his mother. One night, while sleeping in his mother's pouch, he awoke to the sound of a ferocious bark coming from a very large dog. He and his siblings were so scared. His brave mother tried to fight the dog, and as she did, all the little possums ran from their mother's pouch. MUSSOPO was separated and lost from all that he knew and loved. He finally wandered into a small drain pipe and spent a long, cold night shivering and afraid. The next morning, a little blonde-haired boy with denim overalls and yellow rain boots found him. He was only with the boy for a few days. During those days, MUSSOPO stayed in an empty shoebox in the boy's room. He loved the boy because he would hold him tight and pet him on the top of his head between his ears. When he was done petting him, he would let MUSSOPO sleep in the large pocket on the front of his overalls. It reminded MUSSOPO of the safety of his mother's pouch. One day, the boy's father decided that it would be best for the opossum to live at the small petting zoo that was only a few miles from the boy's house. He remembered that the little boy used to come visit him at the petting zoo. He would put his face close to the cage and smile, and with his fingers poked through the openings in the cage, he would pet him on top of his head between his ears. After a while, though, the boy stopped coming. However, life is good in this setting. Sometimes the days are long and there's not much to do when you're by yourself in a cage all day, but MUSSOPO has a big imagination and spends his days dreaming of life back with his mother and brothers and sisters. In this new home, he doesn't hear raging waterfalls or smell the strong smell of pine trees. There are other sights to see and smells to smell in a barnyard. He likes to watch the goats the most. They spend all day jumping and butting their heads together. They love to eat and love when the children are at the zoo to feed them. Children also take turns brushing the goat's hair. Sometimes MUSSOPO wishes he was a goat. He would like to be petted on the head between his ears. There is a large mirror opposite his cage, which gives the barn-like room a larger feeling. It also allows him to see the rabbits that are kept in the cages below the large table that his cage is set upon. Normally, his cage is the only one on the table, but every once in a while, another cage of animals will appear. The most recent was a terrarium that housed 2 turtles. Having a lot of time staring into the long mirror, the opossum often imagined what was beyond the wall. He could see his name above the cage in the reflection of the great mirror, and although he had no recollection of his mother naming him MUSSOPO, he figured that the keepers of the zoo must know something that he didn't. He liked the name, although he doesn't get to hear it used. He would often speak with the other animals, but they didn't always speak back to him. He wasn't sure if they didn't understand him or if they just weren't interested in having a conversation. The most talkative animals in the barn were the goats that were brought into the area behind the cage at night when the keepers went home. They liked to talk to him and would tell him what it was like outside the barn and what it was like to have children pet you and play with you. MUSSOPO would do anything to be able to go outside and play with the children, and he spent a lot of his time daydreaming of what that must be like. The keepers did a great job caring for all the animals. One of the keepers is called Annie, and the other is called Morgan. MUSSOPO and all the animals always had fresh water and food. Sometimes when Morgan was filling his water bowl, he would take a moment and pet MUSSOPO on his head between his ears. In and around the small zoo, a person could smell the hay and the other apparent odors that come from animals that are being kept as pets in pens and cages. It is a beautiful day outside. Although MUSSOPO is in his cage, he can feel the outside. The sun was shining bright, and although it didn't touch him, he could still feel its warmth. The buzz of a fly and the singing of birds played with his imagination. He longed to experience all of this. He wanted to feel it all for himself. Just past the large barn doors that are kept open during the day, streams of people, mostly children, file past the animals all day, looking, pointing, and talking. Every once in a while, one of the goats that are kept outside during the day push past one of the children and enter the building, only to be ushered out by one of the keepers. MUSSOPO wanted to escape like the goat, but he didn't want to be brought back and put in a cage. He wanted freedom. He wanted his mother, and he wanted home. But enough of my ramblings. Let us take a look inside. Let us enter the cage with our curious young opossum and experience MUSSOPO's great adventure. Meet MUSSOPO. I like watching these children all day, thought MUSSOPO to himself, although I do wish that they could pet me like they pet the goats. It must be all the teeth that I have in my mouth. He rubbed his tongue across them as he lay in his cage and counted each one of the 50 sharp teeth. Often children would point and say things like "ooh" and "gross" and call him names like "ugly pig rat." I don't mind, thought MUSSOPO. There is a large metal cage of rats that were just brought in today and set beside his cage. MUSSOPO loved the idea of making friends, but as he watched the new rats, they didn't seem very friendly. They mostly stayed in one corner and gnawed at the bars of the cage. One of them seemed different, though. She seemed lonely. She stayed by herself and did not gnaw at the bars of the cage. After the zoo closes, I hope to meet the rats. They might be nice, MUSSOPO thought to himself. As the day finished, the crowds left and the doors were closed. Most of the animals drifted off to sleep, but MUSSOPO wasn't tired, and it seemed that the rats weren't either. The 3 rats continued gnawing at the iron bars and pulling on them with their teeth, as if they were any match for the strong steel. MUSSOPO had been spending a lot of time lately trying to figure a way to get out of his cage, because in his heart he wanted to return home to the woods with his family. He didn't hate this place, but he missed his family and his home in the woods very much. If I could just get my tail around this latch, MUSSOPO said out loud, but once again he failed. He looked over to the rat's cage and got the attention of the young female rat that was in the cage. She seemed to be friendly but quite timid. The other 3 seemed very bold and less impatient, as they seemed to never stop gnawing at the cage. "How are you?" asked MUSSOPO. She sounded unsure, and she answered, "I'm okay." "Where did you come from?" he asked her. "I'm not sure," she replied as she began to drift off into thought. MUSSOPO was used to animals not wanting to talk and turned to walk away when he heard her voice speak up. "Where did you come from?" she timidly asked. "Somewhere east of here," MUSSOPO said, sure of himself as he motioned his head to the right. "I ended up here when I got separated from my family. It is my plan to escape from this cage and return to them." This caught the attention of the other rats, who pressed in around the young female and interrupted the conversation. "How do you plan to escape?" the 3 said in unison. MUSSOPO wasn't sure how he felt about the rats. They seemed mean to him. They seemed that they couldn't be trusted. But despite his hesitation, he decided to tell them of his plan. "I'm going to use my tail to unlatch the door to my cage, but I'm unable to see the latch and have not been able to undo it yet. But I will keep on trying. Once I'm free from here, I will head east and find my home and my family." MUSSOPO stopped talking, thinking of his family, and smiling his toothy grin. We want out as well, one of the rats said. We want to go home, said another rat mockingly. I want to find my mommy too, said the last rat, laughing. They all three ran back to their corner, chewing away at the strong metal bars of the cage, and all continuing to mock MUSSOPO and laugh their sinister laugh. MUSSOPO went back to a corner of his cage and got comfortable for the night. He began thinking of when he could finally be home with his loved ones. He could hear the soft bleat of a lamb as it snuggled against its mother. He also heard the heavy steps of a horse as it walked across the floor to the water trough. He heard one of the rabbits below his cage jump as its large feet bounced off the cage, and he heard the unending gnawing of rats' teeth against metal bars. He drifted off to sleep. The next couple of days were much the same as any other day. MUSSOPO didn't talk to the rats. The three mean ones would taunt him if he even looked their direction. He spent every day after the keepers left trying to get the cage open using his unique tail. Slowly, he would put his tail through the slats of the bars and feel the latch of the drawer with the tip of his tail. Every once in a while, he could feel the metal latch lift, but it would slip away and fall back into its place. This would go on for hours, but MUSSOPO never gave up. That is chapter 1. Next time, we'll read The Great Escape. I want to thank you for listening to the first chapter of MUSSOPO and His Great Adventure. Until the next chapter, keep imagining and pick up a pen. The next story could be yours.